In the abandoned building, a man is hanging by his hands over a bunch of zombies. A beautiful woman addresses him as Jiang Xiaoyong, saying that all his friends are dead and his life is meaningless. He blames himself for causing them to die, and curses the woman to die in a miserable death. But she doesn't care. The man she's clinging to wants to torture him to please her anger. He sarcastically thanks him for the supplies. Then he drops him in the cage full of zombies. The hungry zombies come to him. They are surrounding him like a pack of wolves preying. However, before he dies, he asks for a second chance to take revenge on them both. Suddenly, our protagonist wakes up to hear someone ask a question. A woman stands before him asking why he didn't add her name to the house deed. Ignoring the woman's question, he is curious if he had been reborn before the apocalypse. He's contemplating that he was deceived in his last life and ended up homeless. Then as the apocalypse hit, most humans turn into zombies. With the help of his friend, he was able to survive, but to his surprise, he was deceived by Kuijing. She betrayed him by letting his enemies into his safe house. Now back to time before the apocalypse, he still demanded his deed to be hers. Whether he likes it or not, he can't act impulsively now. Upon hearing her demand, he pushes her out of his house. Angry Kuijing wonders what's going on. Our protagonist closed the door. Then he quickly checks the date. He noticed that he still had a month before the apocalypse, so he needs to be prepared at that moment. A system window shows up with a mission apocalypse preparation. Upon completion, he will receive reward points. He wonders what it is used for. The system shows a system store that has various items that he can buy with reward points. So he remembered that he was skimping and saving all his money for Kuijing's bride price, which left him malnourished. But now, as his second chance, he quickly took out his phone and ordered the food delivery, thinking he should eat well in the meantime. Later that night, he was amazed by the Michelin 3-star takeaway food. He tries the 300 yuan braised pork first. As he put it in his mouth, he feels like he is the strongest man on earth. Moreover, he keeps devouring all the dishes with happiness. Suddenly, his phone rang. Upon checking his phone, he noticed Kuijing's friend, Wen Shuya, was calling him. Without hesitation, he picked up just to hear her scolding him. Angry, our protagonist to her to get lost. As soon as he told her, he immediately hung up the call. Meanwhile, he starts to think about the system's mission. First, he needs to own a piece of land. Later, at the real estate company, an attendant asks him if he wants to buy a house. But before he can answer, a man interrupts the conversation. He's the sales manager. He asks her to focus on other tasks instead. Though she insisted, he doesn't care. Furthermore, he told her not to pay attention to the broke customers. Upon hearing this, our protagonist asks him not to look down on people. Without hesitation, the sales manager clarifies that he is this kind of person, and if our protagonist effort to buy even a toilet, he will live stream humiliated himself. He loosens his hand from her grip, saying that isn't her business. Our protagonist accepts the challenge and tells him to prepare for the humiliation. He took out a black card and declared he would buy land today. The attendant quickly invites him for a detailed introduction. Doubted, the sales manager doesn't believe and thinks that the protagonist only bragging. In the sales lounge, the attendant gives the paper to him while she explains the rest. However, he doesn't need it. He just tells her his requirements and lets her tell him if anything matches. He needs nearby mountains and water with convenient transportation. On top of that, it should have large buildings. She asks him to let her think about it. Before that, the sales manager intervened and suggested the land in the East District of the T-City, which is an unfinished project, though the attendant refused the idea. Additionally, he said that the protagonist's outrageous demand is only to cause trouble. At the same time, the protagonist confirms if it meets his requirements, to which she replies yes. Despite it being an unfinished project, it still meets all his needs. So he decided to buy it and asked her to make a payment. Doubted, the attendant confirms him one last time. Without hesitation, he tells her to prepare the payment because someone's waiting to be humiliated. Carrying bills, sales managers crying in disbelief that someone spends millions to buy developed land with 300,000 down payments. The protagonist reminds the sales manager that he will need to humiliate himself on a live stream later. No mercy, his co-workers started to film him and teased him. Later, the system shows that the land has been acquired. Now that he has bought land, he needs money to stockpile the supplies too. A man dressed in the mafia Li Shu Xiang walks past by, recognizes him as Jiang Xiaoyong, and wonders what the protagonist is doing here at real estate. The man asks a bunch of other men ganging on workers what they are doing. The scene shifts to Kuijing painting her nails. She answers her phone call to Li Shu Xiang. He asks her if she knows that the protagonist went the real estate. Knowing the protagonist bought land, she slammed the table, thinking that must be the bride price money he saved. Despite Li Shu Xiang telling her to talk with the protagonists, she refuses and wants to expose him online today. Meanwhile, the protagonist is still thinking of a way to get money. Suddenly someone madly knocked on the door. Already knowing who they are, he asks what they are doing, and she asks why he spent her money. Cringe, he asks what's she talking about. She's babbling non-stop with her money. Unable to hold it, the protagonist asks if she's insane. He flashes a deck of cash to tap her shoulder and declares that he has plenty of them. However, he won't spend a single cent on her. Moreover, he knows her affair with Li Shu-xiong. Curious, she contemplates how he knows about her affair. Bain Shuya states it was a misunderstanding, but the protagonist says it's not. He told them to get lost and close the door, leaving Qijing wondering how he knew about the affair. Even though her friend didn't know about the affair, she confessed that she only booked rooms with Li Shuxiang a few times. Her friend suggested going back and thinking of a plan which she agreed to, without knowing that Wen Shuya has her agenda. At the construction site, the protagonist asks how long it will take to complete the factory renovation. The foreman replies it needs the walls, guard tower, barbed wire, thick steel blast-proof doors, and bulletproof glass. The protagonist asks to be done in a month, but the foreman says impossible, unless it costs more. The protagonist asks him to name his price without hesitation. The foreman says 20 million yuan. They would start working if they got 5 million down payment same. The protagonist agrees and promises to pay him within a week. What's more, if he can't pay, the foreman can take his land. Out of the blue, Wen Shuya is calling out to the protagonist, asking him what's he doing here. She's clinging to him tightly. Annoyed by her scamming scheme, he asks what's she doing here. Ignore his question, she asks if this is the land that he bought. He loosens her from her grip, saying that isn't her business, causing her to wonder why he does not react at all. He focuses his attention on the construction workers, leaving her behind. But no matter what, she determined to win over him and claim the land for herself. He's planning to pawn his house to the bank, 3 million, which isn't enough for the down payment. But as the apocalypse is imminent, he doesn't care how many people he will sell this house to. He decided this was the way. Suddenly, someone asks to open the door. Though he owns a couple of floors of the building, Grandpa Lee wants to buy the protagonist's house too. He's used all kinds of dirty tricks to make the protagonist sell his house to him. Both of them scream at each other. Finally, the protagonist agrees to sell his house to him. The old man happily confirms. However, there is a condition that the protagonist will hand over his house 6 months later, plus the old man needs to pay him 5 million to him in one go. Otherwise, he can forget about buying his house. The old man agrees to the proposal and asks the protagonist to sign the contract to prevent backing out, to which he accepted, and the deal concluded. From old man Lee's 5 million and the loan of 3 million, now he got 8 million. With that, the protagonist is about to stockpile the supplies for 365 days. The next day at the shopping center, the protagonist goes on a shopping spree for supplies, which causes everyone to wonder if he has a mental illness. His shopping cart full of supplies. People talk trash about him being a fool for believing in the apocalypse. The system alerts that apocalypse preparation is completed, and he gets 10 points. Enough for him to buy the protagonist's supply box. Without hesitation, he taps on the protagonist's supply box. Then the system indicated exchange success, which kind of a gadget game. He receives a Space Ring Level 1 feature with 500 cubic meters of dimensional space with a time freeze. Smiling, he knew that the first draw was always a golden. From the first look, he knows this is what he needs to store supplies that won't be spoiled. The system shows a new mission, 10 years of sustenance with 20 reward points, if completed. Just then, a man accompanied by 2 guards asks who causing the trouble. He wonders if that is Jiang Xiaoyong, the protagonist. Jiang Xiaoyong addresses him as Yang Tao, his old classmate. He reflects on the past conflicts between them, but now he's accusing the protagonist of causing trouble and telling him to put everything back. The protagonist asks if this is how they treat the customer. Yang Tao tells the protagonist to pay for the supplies, otherwise he will be rough. 1 hour later, finally, the cashiers completed the summary of the bill. The total cost is 56,883 yuan, which Yang Tao urges Jiang Xiaoyong to check out. Without hesitation, the protagonist slides his card in one go, causing Yang Tao to freeze in disbelief. Yang Tao wants to go back, but suddenly the protagonist won't allow it. He asks what the protagonist wants. The protagonist demands an apology, otherwise he will return all the supplies. Yang Tao, outraged, tells him not to cause trouble, but the customers protested and demanded he apologize, or they could make him famous. The protagonist challenges Yang Tao to apologize. He will buy 10 times over. He asks to bring out the POS machine so he can show his balance. The protagonist slides the card. Yang Tao, shocked to the balance, 700,000. Although the protagonist is determined to buy more, he demands an apology. Finally, Yang Tao bows his head with a sincere apology. With satisfaction, the protagonist pats his head, reminding him not to be rude in the future. Then Yang Tao asks what the supplies are for, and the protagonist says he plans for a big deal. Despite the commotion, Yang Tao proposes to go with a wholesaler instead of a supermarket. The protagonist asks for recommendations, to which Yang Tao suggests Zhang Shengji. Immediately he made a call. The protagonist seemed to be wary of their connection. Later they arrive at Zhang Shengji's place. Soon, a luxurious car arrived. Driving recklessly, seemed like he never got scammed by accident before. A man with a long coat smoking a cigarette appears. He asked Yang Tao about big customer. Yang Tao reminded him it was Jiang Xiaoyang, the old classmate. He manages to remember the protagonist, and teasing him with the smoke. What's more, he mentions the protagonist as the guy with less backbone. Zhang Shengji mocks the protagonist, pretending to be a rich man though he doesn't care. He blames Yang Tao for wasting his time. Despite Yang Tao's explanation, he continues to mock Jiang Xiaoyang. It seems the protagonist can't even intimidate an illiterate who looks down on people. Upon hearing this, Zhang Shengji is furiously asking what the protagonist said. Irritated by the protagonist's words, Zhang Shengji asks how dare he call him an illiterate. To his surprise, the protagonist asks him if he can call him a snob instead. Yang Tao tries to calm the situation as the tension builds. Instead, he receives a kick from Zhang Shengji. As if that wasn't enough, Zhang Shengji threatened Jiang Xiaoyang would go back with 4 legs if he didn't buy a whole carload from him. The protagonist tells him to stop pulling his shirt collar, and he will show his account balance. Checking his phone, Zhang Shengji startles to see the balance, which Jiang Xiaoyang doesn't fool around with him. Things calmed a little bit when Zhang Shengji asked what kind of good dose the protagonist wanted. He preferred drinkable and edible supplies. He would take it all. Zhang Shengji asks the protagonist to come with him, as he only plans to sell almost expired supplies. He offers the protagonist 10% off if he buys all the goods, but the protagonist counters with based on supply quality. He complains the supplies are all near expiry date, and admires Zhang Shengji. What a scheme. Alternatively, Zhang Shengji offers a half-price deal, which the protagonist said doesn't need. Furthermore, he adds that his money for quality supplies only lie. However, the protagonist has a proposal for his near-expiry supplies. He will take his 50% off for the near-expiry supplies, but the payment will be settled in the next month. Although the protagonist already explains, Zhang Shengji still doesn't trust him, so he decides to mortgage his house as a collaboration. Moreover, he mentioned not just expired food, even expired food will be worth a fortune too. The protagonist demands not to ask too many questions. He will send the delivery address later. At that moment, someone called to buy his house. Before that, he told Zhang Shengji to sort out the food first. As the protagonist left, they both wondered how an average like him could manage so well. They both agreed the deal for the old man to vacate his house in 3 months. He asks the old man why such a hurry. The old man said he urgently needed it for his granddaughter, asks Jiang Xiaoyang not to back out. The protagonist mentions that the old man isn't afraid of prices rising. The old man was startled, commenting it was his 2 generations worth of money he paid. The protagonist urges the old man not to worry as he already signed the contract. Smiling, the old man pleads with a deal already sealed. Then he bid the protagonist farewell. The protagonist recalls the old man and his granddaughter being honest people won't survive in the apocalypse. He asks the old man for his current address before he leaves. At least that is what he can do. Later, the protagonist inspects the construction site. The foreman reminds him about the second payment. He replies will do it short. But first, he wants to know the completion of the warehouse construction. He calls to let Zhang Shengji start delivering. Sometimes later, workers start loading the supplies. Everything is sorted and tidy. At night, the workers leaving. Our protagonist has nothing to worry about. Everything is done. Then the system shows 10 years of supplies completed with 20 points rewarded. As soon as he opens the system store, a new box is added. He mentions he was so lucky to get the ability box before the apocalypse. He spent 10 points on the ability box. The system announced that he got Mind's Eye level 1 with a feature to detect hostility. He was so delighted to get such a useful ability. Then comes the new mission battle ready with 10 points plus a random reward. After receiving a mission, he smiles because that is what he had in mind. At the black market late night, our protagonist is walking in the street. Coincidentally, someone caught his eyes. It's Li Shuxiang who is bargaining with a dealer. He recalls that Kuijing is dumped enough to fall for this mischief man. Continue walking in the street. Finally, he said he found it. He picked up a knife and as the dealer for something harder. In response, the dealer tells him to buy a sharpener or get a baton. As if those weren't hard enough, he needs something tougher, making the dealer wonder if he's here to cause trouble. But suddenly, the dealer receives 200,000 yuan in his account. The protagonist asks him not to be agitated because he's serious about buying. The dealer quickly tells his friend to watch his stall. He invites the protagonist to go with him. Later they arrive. The dealer introduces a steel ball pistol, but the protagonist doesn't like it, which makes the dealer wonder what it is that he wants. Then he shows a replica revolver. The protagonist doesn't accept the 200,000 he already prepaid the dealer, making the dealer wonder what prepayment. The protagonist clarifies this is 10% prepaid and wants to buy 2 million worth of weapons. But to his surprise, the deal is just a small fry, so he plays along. Fry? The dealer quickly told him to wait. He locked the door, then checked the windows. Suddenly, his face becomes serious, exclaims that the protagonist come to the right place. The dealer asks for the list, and he will give an address to the protagonist to complete the transaction. After that, both leave. At that moment, a man calls his name. It's Li Shuxiang, asking what the protagonist is doing in the black market. As Li Shuxiang's mockery seems to be escalating, it's a good time for the protagonist to test his new ability too. He activates the Mind's Eye ability. As expected, it's a very useful ability. The protagonist points at the goods and mocks Li Shuxiang suited for the second-hand things. Hearing that he curses the protagonist, the dealer asks if he knows the big guy, and he says he is more like an enemy. The dealer is ready to teach the big guy a lesson, but the protagonist asks not to overdo it. The big guy was trembling, tries to persuade the dealer. However, as the protagonists, they don't overdo things here. The big guy couldn't do anything except curse Jiang Shaoyong. 2 days later, the protagonist standing in the warehouse, checking the system mission is completed. With 10 points and a E2 physical enhancements potion, he's delighted with extra reward potions, even a E2 item, equivalent to double the one in the store. He uses the potion on himself. Immediately, his body shakes and he screams in agony. It was just for a moment. Now physical strength and body improved significantly. Then he opens the store to buy another physical enhancement potion. Better to max out this advantage. He now got 8 points in physical and 60% more strength than the average person. He looks at the steel rod, then pick it up. With just one kick, the steel rod is bent almost 90 degrees. The force is quite strong, causing the rod to stick to the wall. With that, he won't be afraid even in the early apocalypse. Checking his weapons in the truck, he decides to keep them in his dimensional space. As he recalls, the day after tomorrow is the day of the apocalypse. Contemplating, he remembers the words of the old man with sympathy. Commenting on life and death experience, he still can't be a ruthless person. Finally, he decides to provide the old man with some supplies for repayment. Later he arrives at the old man's house. He would have lost it if it wasn't for the GPS. He sympathizes with the old man for living in such a cheap place. Arrives at the door, he knocks, but he needs to take out the supplies first. All supplies appear out of his dimensional ring. The old man coming to the door, open. The man thought the protagonist is his landlord. However, he recognized him immediately. The old man asks what he's doing here, but the protagonist insists on moving supplies first. Later the moving is done. The room is decent, and the front door is solid enough. The protagonist is about to tell the old man about the apocalypse, but he pauses, seeing the photo on the desk. The photo of the old man and his granddaughter. It's Shan Shan, his last life friend. He asks the old man if his granddaughter's name is Shan Shan, but the old man doesn't recall saying her name. He asks where she is, to which the old man says she's back home attending school. The protagonist recalls his previous life encounter with Shan Shan, as her grandpa risked everything for her. However, this time the protagonist determines to make up for her regret in this life. The protagonist tells the old man won't be moving to his house anymore, and he is confused, as the protagonist explains that the world apocalypse will hit by tomorrow. After everything he said, the old man still didn't understand. He is too old to understand what he is saying. However, the protagonist decided to show him his ability. He put all the supplies back into the dimensional space, making the old man even more baffled. Despite all that, the protagonist tells the old man to do as he says if he and his granddaughter want to survive. He asks where Shan Shan's school is, then both of them leave for it. Arrived at the school, the protagonist quickly asks the old man to Shan Shan's class. Shan Shan is ganged up by a bunch of student thugs. The girl with the tank top demands what she has to make Shang Shao Cheng likes, but Shan Shan doesn't want to be with him. Another girl told her not to make an excuse. As the tension escalating, the old man shouts for them to stop. As he runs to his granddaughter, he tells them to let her go. However, a bunch of thugs come to interfere. The old man tries to break through them, while the guy with the baseball bat tries to hit him, but Jiang Shaoyang blocked him with just one hand, asking them to learn to be thugs at such a young age. The thug can't break free from the protagonist's grips, so the protagonist kicks him to calm down, send him a flight a few meters away. Other thugs come to play too. The protagonist gives them a serious gaze. They surround him. A guy with the bat strikes from behind. He ducks to dodge, thinking even his reaction time is also improving. He grabbed the thug by the collar and threw him down to the ground. 2 knockout, 1 remaining. Turn back, a knife thrust to his face. He easily grabs it, and finally gifts another kick, to finish all the thugs. They're sleeping well right now. Then walks to the girls. Without speaking a word, he gives the girl with a tank top a sweet slap. She was shockingly stunned with speechless. He continues teaching a lesson to another girl, asking her if she likes pulling her hair, with a slashing swing, showing his serious face. Everyone was speechless. The girl falls on her knee, asking about her hair. Painful about losing her hair, the girl cries out loud. He dropped her hair, and commented, "Long, only be her burden." Then he quickly calls Shan Shan to let's go, to which she wonders where to. They all got in the car. The old man explains to her there will be a big famine soon, but the girl urges him not to believe in scam calls. Looking in the mirror, the protagonist was happy to hear their conversation. He explains that the info about famine has come from him. She wonders who the protagonist is. He introduces himself as Jiang Xiaoyong, and she thanks him for standing up for her. However, she demands to know more details about the famine. He answered it was a made-up story for the old man to understand, which she agrees. But what is about to come is an apocalypse. He said it's about time to check the news on her phone. She grabs her phone, browsing on the news. Everything was wrong, as zombie cases started to show on the news. The situation starts to escalate. She was shocked in disbelief. He added the signs of the apocalypse are already appearing, and marking tomorrow as the first day of the apocalypse. Gradually, a significant portion of the population will mutate into zombies, and another portion won't be spared either. Once they die, they will become them. He asks if she knows what zombies are, to which she says, but it's still unbelievable. However, the MC said she won't find it so unbelievable in the next week. Right now, the car is stuck in a traffic jam. Even for emergency lane is blocked too. The old man was worried that the zombies would catch up with them. However, the me eased him not worry because it was not that urgent. He said it wasn't urgent, although if one existed here that would be a problem. Suddenly, a car rushed from behind, trying to cut into his lane, causing everyone inside a bump. Irritated, the Ming Si wonders what the idiot cut into the line without a turn signal, and he won't let that idiot get away. He stirs the car to block the idiot's opening. As tension grows, the idiot shows no sign of giving up. He still wants to cut into the MC line. However, the MC won't allow it either. Couldn't do anything. The idiot slides down his windows and curses the McWorse. This causes the old to worry, but the MC reassures him if the idiot causes any trouble physically. Finally, after an hour, the traffic is loosened. Immediately, Shan Shan warned the MC to watch out, as the idiot still wants to cut into his lane. Seeing that, the MC clenched his teeth with a high alert. Soon the idiot performs a classic brake, checking him. The old man sees through it and tells Messi not to stop at his level. The Messi recalls in the past, he may have let it slide, but now no need to tolerate this idiot. Then he stomps on the full acceleration pedal, crashing the idiot with full force. Send him wobble to the sideway. Out of the car, the idiot already cursed the McWar. He still won't let it go, as he immediately calls for the traffic police. For the evidence and a license plate number, determined not to let it go. They all arrive at the safe house. The old man was amazed as soon as he saw the side of the building, especially for just the 3 of them. The protagonist urges them to get some because it's going to be hard from tomorrow. In the morning, the protagonist looking from his window, while Shan Shan delighted not to attend morning class. The protagonist invites her to see the fortress, and they all take a stroll around it. He said that the walls are made of reinforced concrete with remote-controlled gates. However, he still reminds them not to let other people come inside. Hearing this, Shan Shan asks about the other survivors, should they leave them to die. He doesn't answer the question. Instead, he asks her to come with him. He said in the apocalypse, human nature is unpredictable. Consequently, having a bleeding heart will only get them killed. And if the survivors come seeking help, they can use the temporary shelter. However, under any circumstances, don't let them inside the fortress if he isn't present here. Then he asks them to see the next section. They arrive at the warehouse food storeroom. As soon as they entered, the protagonist activates the mind's eye ability. He can trust both of them, and it's the first time this sign has appeared. He explains that the weapons are crucial in the apocalypse. They must ensure they keep them under their control and never let anyone else touch them. The old man acknowledges it. Soon the system presents a new mission, Former Comrades, Volume 1, making the protagonist delighted. Just in time, he wonders if he can find his old comrade since He quickly rushes out while still warning them about his rules. Shan asks where he goes, to which the response recruiting new members. At the karaoke, a group of teenagers are happily singing. One of them is Zhang Xie. He and his friend are enjoying their time. As they both left the restroom, he bumped into a pretty girl. He quickly says sorry. However, her boyfriend won't accept it and kicks him in the stomach, causing him to knock back. His friend asks if he's alright. He turns back to confront his boyfriend. The boyfriend's asking if he dares to back to him. The boyfriend lifted Zhang Qi's friend, though Zhang Qi said this was his fault. At that moment, a waiter came out of the bathroom. He quickly helps to break the commotion. However, the boyfriend turns his attention to the waiter, asking him if he knows who he is. The waiter then urges Zhang Qi and his friends to leave while he's dealing with the boyfriend, and they both rush back to their room. As soon as they enter their room, their friend asks if they were chased by a dog. Then the glasses friend explains the whole story. Zhang Qi's friends can't accept it. He wants to get back at the boyfriend. However, Zhang Qi rejects the idea and asks them to continue enjoying their time. At that moment, someone kicks open the door. The boyfriend brings his whole gang while dragging the beat-up waiter into the room. Seeing this, everyone startles. The boyfriend orders his gangs to grab them. They were all squatting, as the waiter is trembling with the beat-up. One of Zhang Qi's friends mocked them for letting him make a call. However, the boyfriend said he isn't allowed to talk. The boyfriend grabs a bottle of whiskey and hits him on the head. Seeing this, Zhang Qi calls out to him. Meanwhile, outside, our MC just arrives at the karaoke, and he said no wonder that Zhang Qi is still a college student. Then he enters the building. Back inside, Zhang Qi kept calling his friend's name as he already lay on the ground. The boyfriend asks if she's satisfied, but she isn't because the one who bumped into her isn't the guy. Then the boyfriend points at Zhang Qi, asking if it's him. However, Qin Chong wakes up and grabs an astray, but he was restrained by the boyfriend's gangs, causing the boyfriend's anger, saying that he got gut. Then the boyfriend hits him with another bottle. This time he's down for good, making Zhang Qi and his friends fight back. Despite the two fighting back, the coward friend is trembling in fear. At the moment, the waiter begins to show signs of infection. As they are fighting, the gangs call the coward friend to get beaten up too. Then the waiter is completely infected. He rushes to the fight, grabs one of the gangs and bites down his shoulder. The gang asks the waiter if he's a dog and calls his members to help. Seeing the scene, the cowardly friend got into despair. Another gang member is helping to loosen the zombie's crunch, but the zombie turns back to bite his hand. Losing balance, the zombie pushes him down to the ground. Luckily, our MC has arrived and grabs the zombie by the neck. With just one hand, he lifted the zombie. Then he pins the zombie down to the TV. In an instant, he tells everyone to stop. The gang who got bitten by the hand amazes how the MC handles the zombie. Then the boyfriend asks who he is. Ignoring the question, the MC asks Zhang Qi if he got bitten or not. He said no, although he didn't understand the who cliché. The MC asks Zhang Qi to come with him. However, the boyfriend disagrees because he isn't done yet. At the same time, his gang is also starting to get infected. The MC noticed it. Judging by the bite mark, the MC asks the guy if he was bitten by the waiter as well, which he replied, yes. Without a doubt, he'll mutate soon. Then the MC is dragging the zombie to lock up in the restroom. After closing the door, the MC relief, as the zombie nowadays doesn't even know how to open the door. With that done, he gets back to business. He asks Zhang Qi which of the gangs that he wants him to deal with first, making Zhang Qi wonder if they know each other. Before he can answer, the boyfriend rushes to the McY. In return, the MC grabs his face and stomp him to the table. Seeing that, the long hair comes at him as well. However, he too receives a fist in the face, causing him to knock back with just a blow. As he sleeps so well on the floor, the last guy went to check on him. Gradually, the MC asks if anyone wants some more. However, he tells Zhang Qi and his friends to wait outside, as the boyfriend's gang has already beaten up. Now they all decide to leave as the long hair is about to be mutated. But the MC is blocking them. For almost got Zhang Qi killed. He pushes the boyfriend back. Then he closes the door. The boyfriend tries to open the door, but at the same time, the long hairs already turns. Everyone asks if he went crazy. Outside the room, the MC still holds the door. When the security asks what's happening, the MC tells him that the room needs to be locked as there is a rabies flu patient inside the room. He urges the manager to urgently inform the police and the hospital. After the door locked, Meg tells Zhang Qi and his friend to hurry and get out of there. As they left, the security guard wondered if there was rabies flu. Another security guard recognizes rabies flu, so they all go to the surveillance room. After seeing the footage, they are shocked to see that cannibalism is spreading inside. Outside, the Me urges everyone to get in the car because this place isn't safe anymore. Then they went on the way. In the car, Zhang thanks the men for helping them. The MC introduces himself as Jiang Shaoyong, and he's here to protect them. One guy asks if the rabies flu is real, to which the MC replies that what happened in the room isn't an illusion. A chubby with glasses asks him if there is any cure for it. Unfortunately, the MC said the disaster won't end, and the world is already in apocalypse. As they all look outside the car, the spread has already begun, and soon it will be out of control. So he needed them to listen to everything he had to say. At that moment, the system shows that the mission is completed. Then he quickly checks the system shop. He noticed that the Apocalypse Farmer box was still in the shop. Therefore, he will redeem them later. As for now, there is one more tricky problem that he needs to deal with. In his previous life, Shang-Chi's friend betrayed him and almost get everyone killed by the zombies. The question is who? Meanwhile, Kui Jing is on the phone with Li Shuxiang. She tells him to bring supplies over, as if there's something up. Suddenly, someone knocked at the door, making her startle. However, she'll call him back later. As she's looking through the peephole, opening the door, she tells Wen Shuya not to scare her like that. Wen Shuya mentioned that the old man Lu was taken away this morning by the police and ambulance, which makes Kui Jing think about the chaos downstairs this morning. Furthermore, she asks if Li Shuxiang delivered the supplies he promised yet. Upon hearing the answer, she urges Kui Jing to tell Li Shuxiang about Jiang Shaoyong's stockpile of supplies, because she had an eye on him since the last time he kicked her out. Jealous, Kui Jing thinks Jiang Shaoyong must have known about the epidemic. Wen Shuya urges her again to get the deal done ASAP so that they both can get a bigger cut from Li Shuxiang. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.